A night shift at the postal sorting office. Welcome. Get comfortable. Tonight we are going to spend a quiet night shift at a postal sorting office in a small town in the north of England. Nothing particularly important happens here. Letters arrive. Letters get sorted. Letters leave. It has been this way for decades, and tonight will be no different. The building is a low, flat-roofed structure on the edge of town, built sometime in the 1960s from pale yellow brick that has darkened slightly over the years from rain and time. There is a car park at the front with faded white lines marking 12 spaces. Tonight, 7 of them are occupied. A sodium lamp at the edge of the car park casts a warm orange glow across the wet tarmac. It rained earlier in the evening, and the surface still holds a faint reflection of the lamp and the pale sky above. Inside, the main sorting floor is large and well lit with fluorescent tubes that hum very faintly if you stand close enough to hear them. The floor is gray concrete, worn smooth by years of trolley wheels and rubber-soled shoes. Along the left wall there are rows of pigeonholes, each labeled with a district or a street name in small printed letters on paper cards slotted into metal holders. Some of the cards are yellowed. A few have been replaced with newer white ones, and the contrast between old and new is noticeable if you look closely. There are 4 people working tonight. Margaret has worked here for 22 years and tonight she is responsible for the first-class letters, which arrive in large gray plastic trays from the van that came in at 9:30. She is methodical. She picks up each letter, reads the postcode, and places it in the correct slot without particular hurry or particular delay. She has done this so many times that her hands seem to move independently of conscious thought. She is thinking about whether she left the back door unlocked, and she will think about this on and off for the next 2 hours before deciding she is almost certain she locked it. Beside her, working through the second-class letters, is a man named Gerald. Gerald is 53 and has a slight preference for working nights because he finds daytime generally too noisy for his liking. He sorts more slowly than Margaret, not because he is less competent, but because he occasionally pauses to look at a particularly interesting postmark or an unusually colored envelope. Tonight he has found a pale green envelope addressed in careful handwriting to someone on Birchwood Avenue. He holds it for a moment, notices it smells faintly of something he cannot identify, then places it in the correct slot and continues. At the far end of the room, near the loading bay, 2 younger workers named Priya and Dean are unloading parcels from a second van and placing them on the long rubber conveyor belt that carries them toward the parcel sorting station. The parcels vary in size. Some are small and firm, boxes from online retailers wrapped in brown paper or printed cardboard with barcodes on the side. Some are larger, taped imperfectly in ways that suggest a first attempt at packing. One parcel near the middle of the current batch is cylindrical, roughly the length of a cricket bat, wrapped in brown paper and tied with actual string, which is unusual enough that Dean holds it up and shows it to Priya, who raises her eyebrows, and then they both return to unloading. The conveyor belt moves steadily. It makes a low, rhythmic sound as it carries its cargo from one end of the room toward the weighing and scanning station. The scanner beeps softly with each parcel that passes beneath it. Beep. Pause. Beep. Pause. The rhythm is consistent and slow. It is now 20 minutes past 10. Outside, the car park is quiet. A van from a courier company that contracts with the Postal Service has just pulled in, and the driver, whose name is Colin, is walking around to the back doors with the particular unhurried gait of someone who has made this stop 300 times. He opens the doors. Inside are 4 large sacks and a plastic crate of parcels. He begins carrying them to the loading bay door one at a time. Margaret has finished the first tray of first-class letters and is now beginning the second. This tray has fewer letters in it. She estimates perhaps 60 or 70. At her current rate she will finish it in about 9 minutes. After that she will have a tea break, which she takes at the same time every night, around 10:30, and which involves a cup of tea made with 1 tea bag and a small splash of milk, and usually a biscuit from the tin that sits on the shelf in the small kitchen at the back of the building. Tonight the tin contains digestives and 2 remaining chocolate bourbons. Margaret will take a digestive. The kitchen is a small room with a single window that looks out onto a service road behind the building. The window is slightly fogged from the warmth inside compared with the cool air outside. There is a kettle, a microwave that does not get used very often, a small refrigerator, and a table with 4 chairs. A notice board on the wall has various papers pinned to it, a rota, a health and safety notice that has been there long enough to curl slightly at the corners, and a photograph from the office Christmas party 2 years ago, slightly out of focus, showing several people standing in front of a table with paper plates on it. Gerald finishes a tray of second-class letters and pauses. He stretches his back slowly, places both hands on the base of his spine and leans backward slightly, then straightens again. He takes the empty tray and stacks it with the other empty trays at the end of the sorting bench. He picks up a new full tray and begins again. The letters in Gerald's current tray are a fairly typical assortment. Several are clearly bills, the window envelopes with typed addresses and the names of utility companies visible through the plastic film. Several are from what appear to be charities, judging by the return addresses printed in the upper left corners. One is a thick cream envelope that looks like an invitation. Gerald notes that it is going to an address on Ferndale Close, which is one of the newer streets near the edge of town, and that the handwriting is careful and slightly old-fashioned, with fully formed letters rather than the abbreviated strokes that most people use now. Priya and Dean have finished unloading Colin's delivery and are now working through the parcels on the conveyor. Priya handles the scanning while Dean manages the physical sorting, lifting parcels from the end of the belt and placing them in the correct bays according to the delivery route maps posted on the wall. The maps are laminated and slightly faded. Some of the roads on them have been renamed since the maps were printed, and small handwritten corrections have been made in blue pen at those locations. It is now 23 minutes to 11. The sorting office is warm from the lighting and the body heat of 4 people working steadily. The hum of the fluorescent lights is a constant, low presence in the room. Outside, the sodium lamp continues its orange glow. A cat has appeared at the edge of the car park and is sitting very still on the curb near the entrance, looking at something in the darkness beyond the lamp's reach. After a while it looks away and begins washing its face with methodical strokes of its paw. Margaret has had her tea break and returned. The tea was good. The biscuit was adequate. She is now working through a bag of special delivery items, which require slightly more attention because each one needs to be scanned individually and placed in a separate secure area at the back of the sorting floor. She picks up the scanner, a battered handheld device with a cracked rubber casing that has been repaired with a strip of black electrical tape, and begins working through the items one at a time. Scan. Place. Scan. Place. The special delivery items are mostly parcels, though there are a few thick envelopes among them. One parcel is extremely heavy relative to its size, a small box perhaps 20 centimeters square that requires both hands to lift comfortably. Margaret wonders briefly what is inside it before scanning it and placing it in the secure bay. She will not think about it again. Gerald is on his third tray of the evening. He has found a letter that has been damaged in transit. The corner is torn and the envelope is slightly damp, which suggests it was somehow exposed to moisture somewhere along its journey. He sets it aside and makes a note on the damaged items log, a clipboard hanging on a hook near the end of the bench. The log has a form with various fields: date, item description, nature of damage, action taken. Gerald fills it in neatly. His handwriting is small and even. Dean has been to the kitchen for water and has returned. He is drinking from a large plastic bottle that he keeps on a shelf near the parcel bays. He takes a long drink, replaces the cap, puts the bottle back on the shelf, and returns to sorting. A new batch of parcels has arrived from the conveyor and he works through them steadily, placing each one in the correct bay with a soft thud. The parcels make different sounds depending on their contents and packaging. Hard boxes make a clean, flat sound. Softer packages make a duller, more muffled sound. The cylindrical parcel tied with string, which Dean sorted earlier and which turned out to be destined for an address on Hawthorne Lane, made a slightly hollow sound when placed in its bay, like there was something lightweight inside the tube. Outside, the cat has moved from the curb and is now sitting in the middle of the car park, still and watchful. A light breeze moves through the car park and the cat's fur shifts slightly along its spine. After a moment the cat stands, stretches its back legs one at a time, and walks with unhurried precision toward the far corner of the car park where there is a gap in the low wall. It passes through the gap and disappears. It is now 11 o'clock. Margaret notes this on the shift log without particular ceremony. The shift will run until 6 in the morning. There is still a great deal of sorting to be done, but the pace is steady and manageable, as it almost always is on nights like this when no unusual volumes have come through. Gerald has made himself a cup of tea without going to the kitchen. There is a small kettle on a ledge near the sorting benches for exactly this purpose, with a small jar of instant coffee beside it and a box of tea bags and a carton of long-life milk. He makes the tea and sets it to cool slightly at the edge of the bench while he continues working. Every 2 or 3 minutes he picks it up, assesses whether it is cooled enough, takes a sip or replaces it, and continues. Priya is going through a stack of recorded delivery items, cross-referencing each one against a manifest on a clipboard. She checks the barcode, checks the address, checks the manifest. Ticks the box. Moves to the next one. The manifest is 3 pages long and she is on the second page. The items themselves are arranged in a neat row on the bench in front of her, their labels facing outward. The loading bay is quiet now. No vans are expected for another hour and a half, when the main overnight lorry from the regional hub will arrive with the bulk of tomorrow's delivery volume. This is the quiet period of the shift, the middle portion when the immediate work is manageable and the next big task has not yet arrived. It has a particular quality, this time of night, not silence exactly, because there is always the hum of the lights and the distant sound of the conveyor and the soft scuffing of feet on concrete, but a kind of settled quietness that is different from the comparative bustle of the shift start. Margaret finishes the special delivery bag and begins work on a small stack of large letter envelopes, items slightly too large for the standard letter slots, which have their own section of the sorting frame toward the right side of the room. These include padded envelopes, cardboard-backed envelopes that contain photographs or documents that cannot be folded, and occasionally rolled items in postal tubes. One of the large letter envelopes is addressed in purple ink, which is unusual. The handwriting is looped and exuberant, quite different from the careful hand on the cream invitation Gerald sorted earlier. Margaret reads the postcode and places it in the appropriate slot. She moves to the next one. The night continues in this fashion. Letters sorted. Parcels placed. Tea consumed. The fluorescent lights hum. The conveyor moves. Outside the window of the small kitchen, the service road is dark and empty. A light drizzle has begun, barely enough to be called rain, more a faint dampening of the air that makes the orange glow of the sodium lamp in the car park seem slightly softer and more diffuse. Dean has finished his water and is now sorting through a new batch of parcels. He has found a system for moving through them efficiently. He reads the postcode first, identifies the route, places the parcel, and moves immediately to the next without pausing. It is almost meditative, this rhythm, and he finds the night shift generally preferable to day shifts for exactly this reason. There is a quality of uninterrupted focus available at night that daytime rarely offers. Gerald has finished his tea and set the empty cup aside to be washed later. He is now on his 5th tray of second-class letters. He has noticed that this tray seems to contain a higher proportion of charity appeal letters than usual. He wonders mildly whether some charity has recently done a large mail-out, then returns his attention to the current letter in his hand, which is addressed to a Mrs. East Hartley on Sycamore Drive and appears, from the printing on the envelope, to be from an insurance company. The building settles faintly from time to time, the sounds that large flat-roofed buildings make at night when the temperature outside drops and the materials of the structure contract very slightly. A soft tick from somewhere above the ceiling. A faint creak from the loading bay doors. These sounds are familiar to everyone who works here and no one notices them. Priya has completed the recorded delivery manifest and is now filing the paperwork. She attaches the manifest pages to a clipboard with a binder clip, writes the date in the corner, and places it in the completed documents tray. She then turns to the next task, which is working through a collection of undeliverable items that have accumulated during the week. These returned items each need to be assessed. Some can be redirected. Some need to go to the dead letter office. Some have forwarding addresses noted on file. Priya works through them one at a time, checking each one against the redirection database on the computer terminal at the end of her bench. The terminal has been running since the start of the shift and the screen has a faint warmth to it. The database is slow tonight. Each search takes 3 or 4 seconds to return a result. Priya waits for each result without impatience. She has learned that impatience with the database serves no purpose. It is now 20 minutes past 11. Outside, the drizzle continues, still very light. The car park is empty of people. Inside, the 4 remaining workers continue. The fluorescent lights continue their low hum. The conveyor belt continues its steady movement. The scanner continues its soft, rhythmic beeping. Gerald is now on his 6th tray. He is thinking about a television program he watched the previous evening, a nature documentary about deep ocean creatures. He found it interesting but also faintly unsettling, and now, standing at the sorting bench at nearly 11:30 in a quiet sorting office, he is thinking about the fathomless dark of the deep ocean with a kind of detached wonder. Then a letter requires his attention and he returns to it. Dean has been working through the parcel bays and has now completed all the parcels from the most recent batch. He walks over to Gerald and mentions quietly that Route 7's bay is getting close to capacity and might need a res tac before the lorry arrives. Gerald nods, finishes the letter in his hand, and then walks with Dean to look at the bay. They assess it together and agree it will need reorganizing. They begin fitting the parcels together more efficiently, flat things at the back, heavy things at the bottom, odd shapes fitted into gaps. The process takes about 8 minutes. When they are done, the bay has noticeably more space. It is now 12 minutes past midnight. The room feels the same as it has all evening. The lights hum. Margaret has finished her current task and is doing a general tidy of her work area, stacking empty trays, repositioning her scanner in its cradle, checking the supply of rubber bands. These small acts of maintenance are ones she performs automatically throughout the shift, keeping her space orderly from the straightforward practicality that an orderly workspace is easier to work in. She looks at the clock. She looks at the remaining work. She makes a quiet internal calculation about the pace required for the rest of the shift and determines it is manageable. She picks up the next item. Gerald is back at his sorting bench, on his 7th tray now, thinking about nothing in particular, which is a state he quite enjoys and which the sorting work seems to facilitate. His hands move. Letters move from tray to slot. The rhythm continues, steady and unhurried, the same rhythm it has held since 9 o'clock and the same rhythm it will hold until morning. Outside, the drizzle has stopped. The car park is still wet, the tarmac holding the orange light of the sodium lamp in its surface. The air is cool and still. The sorting office windows are fogged slightly from inside. The workers continue their work. The letters move from one place to another, each one carrying its small cargo of words toward someone who is waiting for it, or perhaps not waiting, perhaps asleep by now, lying in a warm bed somewhere in the town, while outside the night is quiet and the letters travel steadily, unhurried, toward morning.